All right, we are now live on Facebook. Namaste, good evening, assalamu alaikum, shalom, dorud, sat sri akal, and welcome, General Ian Cardozo, back to the Author Experience Conversations. Pleasure and a delight to have you back with us again.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
And looking forward to learning from your insights, and a warm welcome to everybody who's joined us on Facebook Live today to listen in to General Ian Cardozo speak about his book and books, because he's written many books, mostly related to Indian Armed Forces heroes, and we will learn more about that in a little while from now. Just to kind of give you a little insight about what we are doing with the Author Experience Conversations. We started the Author Experience Conversations during the first lockdown in 2020, and then we have continued inviting authors, best-selling authors from around the world to be a part of the Author Experience Conversation. We are now in season 5, and we started this year, season 5, with Bishop Ria, and we had Bishop Ria who discussed his book Caught in Between, which is about his being caught in between the various conflicts happening in the region of Palestine, because he's a original inhabitant of Palestine, the genuine original citizen, unlike many of the Israelis who are today claiming it to be their land and trying to oust people from their own land by saying that Palestine and Israel and everything around Israel is our promised land. And Bishop Ria is also the person who facilitated the Oslo Peace Accord between Israel and Palestine in the era of Arafat. And then we had Sanjay Jha last Sunday, the Sunday before, discussing about what is the state of the state as far as Indian politics is concerned, and how there are huge concerns around the current elections and what could happen if BJP comes back to power. And then last Sunday we had Rusty Labushkagne, who is from Zimbabwe and now lives in South Africa, discussing his book Beating Chains and his life journey about how, through resilience, he has managed to face several challenges and adversity in his life. And he shared some insights about how we need to rise to the occasion to embrace challenges rather than trying to avoid them, because challenges help us to become much better versions of ourselves. And in that spirit and in that light, today we have General Ian Cardozo to discuss his book Beyond Fear. And who better to speak to us about how to understand the science of resilience and learn how to rise over fear to kind of bring out the best version of yourself, by learning how to do that by what he calls as biting the bullet. And I would like to understand more about what biting the bullet is. And next week we have Marina Lazarus, who's going to talk about how men need love too, and what it needs for men to stay emotionally, mentally, spiritually, morally, and physically healthy. So that's the lineup we have, and we have many more authors in the next few Sundays. To begin with, General Ian Cardozo, I'm going to start with a very touchy topic, and a topic which is very dear to my heart. You know, as we speak, there are wars happening between Russia and Ukraine, and what is also being claimed as a war, which has been waged by Israel on Palestine. I don't think it is a war at all. I think it is war crimes rather, and crimes against humanity, because people in Palestine are being marginalized. We have seen innocent children, in thousands, innocent children and people who have been killed in the Gaza region, in several other regions of Palestine, including bombing of hospitals and several other shelters where people have been taking refuge. And this brings me to a very important question. And I seek insight from you, because you have served in the Bangladesh war, you have served in several other wars, and in your time when India participated in a war, it was mostly to save children and women and people from crimes being perpetrated against them by soldiers from Pakistan. And that is how India intervened in Bangladesh. And I think it was very honorable and noble at that time. you lost your leg in that war, and then you fought the Indian government to fight another war and command another, uh, you know,
Battalion.
battalion of troops in another war. But that said, my question to you is today, do you see any nobility? Do you see any honor in being a soldier anymore? Because soldiers, unfortunately, are being sent to so-called wars, yeah, by so-called leaders. And I'm calling them so-called because I don't think they are leaders at all. They're basically war criminals, as far as I'm concerned. Whether it's a Netanyahu in Israel or a Biden in US or a Rishi Sunak in UK, who are all participating and are complicit in these war crimes which are being perpetrated against the people of Palestine. And it's heartrending to see that, there's complete apathy in the world. No one wants to raise their voice. The few who are raising their voice are doing so on social media, and more so on LinkedIn this time. It's not happening on Facebook or Twitter. It's happening on LinkedIn. And there are several people who are working executives, corporate executives, who have raised their voice. Some have even lost their jobs. Some have lost their professions. And yet, even after a war crime was filed in the International Court of Justice at The Hague by a country called South Africa, and they were told to cease fire, we see killings still happening, genocide still happening, war crimes still happening, crimes against humanity still happening, where you have children, people, women being murdered in broad daylight, if I may call it that. Now, do you think soldiering is noble anymore? Because these are soldiers of Israel, these are soldiers of several other crony countries which are complicit in the crimes, who are perpetrating these crimes. What are your thoughts and insights on this?
Jerry, that's a very difficult question to answer, but I'll attempt to answer you. Firstly, I would like to get to the basic issue of why do wars happen? And wars happen because of one single factor, and that is greed. Greed for power, greed for resources which don't belong to you, and therefore people go to any length to get what is not theirs. So, whether it is religion, whether it is politics, whether it is economics, whether it is social media, social issues, all boils down to one word, and that is greed. Greed for power and greed for resources. Whether you
Absolutely.
call it,
And I completely agree with you, because most so-called politicians who are heading governments today, I won't call them leaders because they're far from being leaders, are mostly puppets of the military industrial complex, which is a big business model on its own. So it surely boils down to greed. I completely agree with you.
now the second issue is uh, the issue about whether it is honorable to be a soldier anymore. Let me tell you first that a soldier fights for his country, and if the country has not got the right just cause, then there is a problem.
That's exactly what my question was, and it's related to what you just spoke about.
So, take for instance what happened in Bangladesh. In 1971, Pakistan, West Pakistan, although East Pakistan won a landslide election, and the prime minister would have been a Bengali, the president would have been a Bengali, most of the ministers would be Bengalis, and the Punjabis and the Pathans wouldn't accept it. They launched a genocide. I'm cutting it short. 1 million people were killed, women and girls were raped in front of their husbands and their brothers, and they were slaughtered. And this was led by Pakistani army officers and
Absolutely.
men. So, how could they win such a? How could they fight? They had no cause. They had no just cause. They knew that they were wrong. They knew that they were evil, and that's why they lost so badly. They didn't have will to fight. They didn't respect their officers. The officers didn't respect themselves. The Indian Army, we have fought 5 wars since independence, and every war has been inflicted upon us by either China or Pakistan. So we are fighting for what is right. We are fighting for what is just, and therefore, being a soldier is a very honorable profession. And our values of a soldier. Why does the soldier fight? Because, firstly, leadership. Leading men into battle is a privilege given to very few. And that is an awesome responsibility. Awesome because it falls on the shoulders of very young officers. But they are there right out in front, setting a personal example. And the soldiers, Indian soldiers who are the best in the world, follow their officers without any pause, without any doubts. So, what are the factors? Love for your country, honor, honor from which all other values flow, justice, sacrifice, commitment, dedication. These are all what make the Indian soldier what he is. And
Very true.
therefore, it's a very, very honorable profession, but the cause has to be just.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you. My father-in-law also served in the army in the same war that you served, and Sylhet was actually captured by him and his troops, and so there is huge nobility and honor which is there in being a soldier. I think I'll unpack my question a little more. When you have very poor quality of leaders in the world today, whether it's Biden in the US, Sunak in the UK, Macron in France, Netanyahu in Israel. You had Bolsonaro in Brazil, and if Bolsonaro was still heading the government of Brazil, Brazil would have taken sides with Israel and been complicit in the genocides happening against the people of Palestine. But Luis Silva has taken a stand, and he stands with the people of Palestine today. So, but my question to you is, can soldiers do right and do what is noble when there's such poor quality of leaders around the world today, which includes India, because India is today standing with Israel. Is India once upon a time used to be a neutral country. We didn't attack anyone. We only defended ourselves, and we would intervene if there was a peacekeeping corps required, right? But today we are taking sides very, very clearly with Israel and saying what Israel is doing is right. So today, if soldiers and troops from India are deployed to that region, they have to fight for Israel against the people of Palestine, which means we would be perpetrating war crimes too. So my question to you is: can a soldier be noble and honorable still in these times when you have very poor quality of leaders? Because if the soldier goes against the government, he could be court-martialed, he could be suspended. What are your thoughts on this?
Uh, Jerry, your question is a political question.
Very
It
true.
is not a military question, and I'm a soldier. I'm not
Right.
a politician. But the issue is, as far as this particular issue is concerned, uh, India's alignment with Israel and Israel is fighting an unjust war, etc. That is a matter of perception. The issue is that the soldier is not fighting the Palestinians, he's not fighting anyone. It's the politicians who have linked with whoever they want to link.
Right.
So the soldier is above all this.
Okay. So the soldier has no, and yet you have many soldiers in Israel, in the US, who are standing up and speaking out against their own countries. What would you say to that?
Well,
I
it
think
is
that requires huge honor and courage.
that is true, Jerry. But the point is this: uh, the soldier needs to fight for a just cause. He needs to do what is right, irrespective of the consequences. But
Okay.
if every soldier started questioning the leadership, then I'm afraid uh, there will be no question of sovereignty of a country. The soldier would not be doing his job, and there will be total chaos. So
Okay.
the soldier has to do what he is told.
Right.
He may question the officer may question what he thinks is wrong to a particular degree, but there's a limit to what he can go. After that, he has to do what he's told. Because even in India, uh, you take, for instance, what happened in Manipur.
Right.
the army, duty of the army, the role of the army is to defend the country against external aggression and internal dissension.
Right.
Now, Manipur was the issue of internal dissension,
Okay.
but the army could not intervene unless it is called. Army can only come in when the government asks for assistance to civil authority. If the government doesn't ask us to come, then we can't come. So there is a certain amount of legality in what we do, what we don't do. The army is very upset about not being called in. But then what
Right.
could it do? It
Right.
couldn't come when the government hadn't called it.
Right. So what you're saying is that the soldiers, the armed forces have to follow the command and the order of the politicians at large. So
Not
that
blindly. Not
not
blindly.
okay.
They
Okay.
have they have to say. You take Sam Manekshaw.
Right.
When when Indira Gandhi told Sam, "I want you to march into East Pakistan," he straight away said, "I'm sorry, this is not the right time. This is not the right place."
Right.
And therefore, she said, that, what do you mean? I'm the prime minister. I'm asking you to do something. You're saying no." He
But
says,
then General Cardozo, I'm sorry, I'm going to interject over here. They don't make men like you and Sam Manekshaw anymore.
well,
Those men of honor are missing even in the armed forces today. I would say that on record.
that's a view of not only of you, Jerry. It's a view of many people because another issue which is causing a lot of heartburn amongst the armed forces is this question of Agni Path,
Right.
where soldiers who have to fight are being asked to serve for only 4 years
Right.
on the basis of the reason given that they don't want to be given a pension.
Right.
The MP serves for 5 years and he
Right.
gets a pension. If he serves
Right.
for 10 years, he gets two pensions and he gets everything on the house. But they don't want to give a soldier a pension. What is this nonsense?
Right.
Will he stick his neck out in battle?
True. Yes. So yeah, from the political space of war and peace, I'm going to go into the military space back. And there are several old sayings which people follow blindly. Like there's this saying which is in Latin, "Si vi pace para bellum," which basically means if you want peace, prepare for war. And then you have some other stupid sayings like everything is fair in peace and war. And then we've seen what soldiers do when they get power or get orders to do as they please to control people. We've seen that in Gitmo Bay, we've seen that in Kashmir, we've seen that in several other places where in India also where insurgencies have been there. Don't you think that there's wrong leadership at the top and those commands and orders are given and some soldiers blindly follow them? Don't you think there is a issue there? And this is my last question to you on this issue before we move to your story and the book.
Jerry, it's a question of perception. When you look at two boxers fighting and you have your team is the blue with the blue color,
Right.
you only look at what he is doing. You're not looking at the other person. So your perception is only on what you think your team should get the points. This perception is wrong. To say that what we're doing in Kashmir is wrong is I think abominable because there are terrorists coming in from outside. They are massacring women and
No, no,
children.
no, no, no. I'm not saying that what we are doing as an army in Kashmir is wrong. I'm saying there were some soldiers, like there was this one soldier who strapped a civilian to a jeep and drove him all around. And then that's why I said soldiers who do wrong. I'm not talking about the entire army or the armed forces doing wrong. So that's a mandate that we have to safeguard and protect the country against external forces and internal insurgents, like you said. But I'm saying that when they're wrong leaders and they're passing on the wrong messaging, sometimes it all goes wrong. So you've seen the kind of atrocities which have been committed by soldiers. These are I'm not saying soldiers in general. These are by far a few, no doubt. But yet, I have a dear friend and a fellow author whose name is Dr. Phil Zimbardo. He used to be a professor at Stanford, and he's the chap who uh, did that study called "Why Do People Commit Evil Crimes?" It was called the Lucifer effect, and he realized that one is because that power that is given to them brings out the evil in them. The second is because they've been ordered to do things which are atrocious. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that India is wrong to protect from internal or external enemies in Kashmir. That's not what I'm saying.
No, Jerry, I'll take you on this issue about the soldier, the officer who
Yeah,
tied that terrorist to his jeep.
right,
What was happening?
right.
The people in Kashmir, paid by outside forces, were stoning the soldiers, and the soldiers couldn't do anything. Why? Because they were using women and children as shields. So what could the soldiers do? So they tied this terrorist to the sheep, to the jeep, and they couldn't stone the jeep anymore. So what was wrong about that? I think it was very right. I think he did a great job.
Okay, okay. All right. Like you said, it's a matter of perception. So we leave it with that. All right. Okay. Coming to your life story, it's an interesting life story. I know the story, of course, because I've known you for years now. I've heard your story several times, sometimes in the first person from you. I think everybody who's watching this on Facebook Live, quite a few people have joined it. We would like you to walk us through your life story, right from your childhood to what inspired you to be a soldier, to what inspired you to fighting against the system and saying, I can still fight another war after you lost a leg in the Bangladesh war. I mean, where does this inspiration come from? Where does this resilience come from? And then,
Uh,
of course, we'll get into your book. But right now, on your life journey and life story, over to
okay,
you. The
Jerry.
virtual stage is all yours.
Okay, Jerry. It's a long story, so I'll try to cut it short.
Yes.
Uh, you know, what I was born in so and so place. I was born. That's all very
Yeah.
boring. But
No, no. I'll let you tell it to us in your way.
yeah, okay. So the thing is, when I was in school, my parents gave me the right values. They never bothered about what was my order of merit in the class, but they said, we want you to be a good human being. So, my mother in particular instilled in us the issues, the values of truth, the values of doing what is right irrespective of the consequences, of never giving up, and things like that. And my father ushered me into reading because he used to get books for me from J.B. Pettit and stories about World War II. It was that time, it was 1943, 44. World War II was going on. So life was interesting. Then after school and college, when I went to college, I found that, wow, life is pretty boring in city street. You go to the same place, you meet the same people, you travel in the same car or train or whatever, and there's no adventure, there's no sense of nothing interesting in this. At that time, an ad came in the newspapers about the National Defense Academy, and I said, well, that's the place to go. And I sat for the exam, I got through, and I went for the interview, I got through, and I went to the NDA. That's where all the problems started because NDA is a huge campus with the drill square at one place, the riding school somewhere else, the swimming pool somewhere else, the adding block somewhere else, and you couldn't survive if you didn't have a cycle. And on the very first day, I broke my bike. I fell down from an escarpment about 12 feet, and my cycle was a mess. They they never gave me a cycle. They said you're responsible for your own consequences, and you take the punishment. So I had to run from one place to the other. I was the only spectacle in the whole academy. Everybody was racing to one place to the other on their bikes, and I was running. I was late everywhere. I was punished every day. I used to skip my breakfast because I was going to be late. I used to skip dinner because I used to be punished on punishment every night. I lost about 17 kgs in about 3 months. But it was very, very tough. But I decided not to give up. I didn't know what I would do, but I just said I will just keep on. And then, like a drowned man looking, I mean, clutching at a straw, the novices boxing started, and I decided this is the place, the opportunity to make my mark. And I won all my bouts till I reached the finals. And then my squadron commander, my div officer, my squadron cadet captain all said, "Oh, this guy is not that bad after all. He's got something in him." And so they gave me my cycle. But the point is, by the end of 6 months, I was at the bottom of my course. And then in the next term, I failed in Hindi, I failed in maths, and things were not improving. But I was good in sports. I was good in hockey. I played for the St. Xavier School, College, Lusitanians B team. I was very good in swimming. I broke the underwater record. I played football. I was good in athletics. So my divorce said, "See, you're doing pretty well everywhere else. If you pass in Hindi and maths, uh, you will shoot to the top." So I said, "But how can I do that?" So he said, "The nights are yours." I said, "But lights out is at 10 o'clock. How do I do that?" He said, "You find your own solution." So I used to study at night with a blanket on top of my head and a torch. And I did well in all subjects except Hindi and maths. And then he said, "There's something known as the principle of war called cooperation. You teach others what they need to know, for instance, Shakespeare and social studies and things like that, and they'll teach you maths and Hindi." And it worked. In the fourth term, I passed in Hindi and maths. It wasn't that difficult after all, which means that if you really put your mind to it, you can solve any problem. And then in the fifth term, I was number two in my course. But and then in the and I had to. We were fighting for the championship, my squadron, and on the on one particular day, there was the hockey finals. Which if we won the hockey finals, we win the championship. But on the same day, there was the boxing championship, and I reached the finals. I had to fight the boxing captain, who was the killer. He won all his fights by knockouts. So I had to fight him. I got the thrashing of my life.
So
Many
were you knocked out?
I hit the canvas a number of times.
Okay.
I was bleeding from my nose. I was bleeding from my mouth. I was cut above. I had a cut above my eyebrow. It had to be stitched. And many years later, the army chief Padmanabhan, when visiting Dalhousie brigade, he came across my son who had joined the army in my battalion, and he said, "Cardozo." He said, "Sir." He said, "Are you any relation to General Cardozo?" He said, "Sir." He said, who is he to you?" "He's my dad, sir." "Did he tell you about the thrashing he got in the NDA?" "No, sir."
Okay.
"Ask him." So what happened was is because I fought, I refused to get knocked out, and although my squadron commander wanted to terminate the fight, he threw the towel into the ring and said, "Stop the fight." But the referee, Major Abraham from the PT school, asked me whether I would like to fight or give up. So I said, "I want to fight." And I lasted out, and the commandant was there, and they probably saw some merit in the fact that I never gave up. And for my final term, I became the Army Cadet captain. But I was in the run for one of the medals. But we had at that time the regimental sergeant major was a Britisher, and head of the training team was an Irishman. And the Irishman wanted me to imitate an Indian officer, which I refused. And he reported me to the commandant. And the commandant sent for me and said, "Ian, what's this I hear? Are you afraid? Are you afraid of imitating an officer? You know it can be done. And if you are going to be afraid of a little thing like this, what will you do in war?" So I told, luckily the colonel was standing there. So I said, "Sir, if I should be afraid of anybody, it's not Major so and so, it is this colonel who is threatening to withdraw me from the academy if I don't imitate this major," and I refused. So who should I be afraid of? This major or the colonel? So that sort of solved the problem. So the point is, I learned at a very young age that doing what is right is important, irrespective of the consequences.
Very true.
And
Very true. And that's the choice you need to make.
yeah, and it helped me. It didn't work out exactly the same way the rest of my life in the army, I had to pay for for certain decisions I took, which were not palatable with the seniors. But that's okay.
It's great. So that's a interesting life journey. And
After that, when I lost my leg, the army headquarters said that you can't go back to your troops, and you'll get if you insist on staying in the army, you'll do a babu's job. And I said, no, that's not what I joined the army for. I joined for to serve in combat, and there's nothing wrong with me. Having a wooden leg is not should not be a limitation. It should be an advantage. I have one leg less to get hurt. So so I fought the system for 7 years, and I was lucky, or God was there. I don't know. I think God helped, and the army relented. They listened to me. They gave me a battalion. They gave me a brigade. I commanded the division, and the whole system, the whole hierarchical system, like the army headquarters, changed its policy because I chose to stand up and say I want to do what I want to do.
so you also set a great precedent for other soldiers who also wanted to serve after being injured.
Yeah. Not only that, out of three disabled soldiers, the officers became army commanders, which is one rank below the chief, and
Right.
they're waiting for the day when a disabled officer becomes the chief.
Super. Very nice. And I hope I live to see that day. So tell us a little more about your book, sir. Beyond Fear. Tell us a little more about the stories that you featured in this book and what is Beyond Fear stories all about before we get into the insights, how to get over fear when you feel fear, and how do we face fear and or rather run from it, and what does biting the bullet mean. Before we get into those insights, I would like you to tell us a few stories from the book.
Yeah. The thing is this, uh, Jerry, is that all my writing, and I've written 9 books, all my writing is focused on bringing the army closer to the man in the street.
Right,
The,
right,
the Indian citizen uh, has a vague, very vague idea about what the army does, what the soldier does, what the officer does,
right,
and uh, they admire him, but they don't know how we live and how we do our duty and if necessarily die in war. So therefore, the as my writing was all based on that. My first book was on Paramveer. It is on the life of the 21 Paramveer Chakra, the bravest of the brave.
right.
And that book has gone into 14 reprints because it appealed to many people, various segments of society, and it told the story about war in a very uh, way which appealed to the reader. And then I wrote about the sinking of INS Kukri, which is another great story. Then I wrote about the 1970. I wrote my history of my battalion, history of my regiment, and I wrote about VCs of World War One. So it is all focused on bringing the army closer to the man in the street.
Right.
And then I realized that perhaps what the reader really wants to know is something close to his heart, and that is the question of what he faces in everyday life. And in everyday life, all of us uh, face this issue about fear. Fear about doing something because we are not sure of the consequences, fear of failing. And in the army, we make sure there's no question of having to think.
Right.
We are taught that you have to react to the situation because there's no time to think and there's no time to feel fear, to feel afraid. You have to do what you're supposed to do, and you are trained to do that. And we are trained to find solutions because when you have a problem, if you have to resolve it, every problem has a solution. But that solution has to be looked for, that solution has to be found. And you can't do that unless you make every effort to find that solution. And in the army, they try and do this even before the problem arises. You anticipate the problem and train the soldier in such a way that he knows what he has to do to combat fear. And it applies to the corporate sector as well. It applies to every one of us. When you want to get married, there's a question of fear. Am I doing the right thing? Am I choosing the right girl?
Right.
If you want to have a startup, Am I doing the right thing? Am I investing the money in the right? So in everything that you do, there's always fear. But you need to understand that there is always a solution to overcome that fear, and you must not run away from that issue, but you've got to do what you have to do to solve the problem, and then that's how you conquer fear.
So in the book, you have some stories, including a ghost story, which is about narrated to the author by an officer of the Garhwal Rifles. What is that ghost story about? Is it that some soldiers were fearing a ghost, a spirit, or what is it about?
No, the ghost story is firstly, it was my granddaughter who said, Grandpa, your stories, there's no romance in your stories at all. So why don't you put a little romance in the story? So if you read the story, it's a bit of a love story also.
Okay,
And yeah, and it's Garhwali officer who loses a leg, and he's in the center, and he is a dinner night, and he he's at the dinner table, and he finds a place opposite him where there's nobody sitting there, but that chair is being served, the empty chair is being served with soup and liquor and food, and there's nobody there. So he finds out what this is all about, and he's told that there is a captain of the British Army who loved his troops so much that he is roaming around the center, making
okay,
sure that everything is all right.
okay,
So, so this now sitting at the dining table with him is a girl, the,
right.
the daughter of a brigadier, and they are both looking at this empty chair and wondering what it is all about. So he finds out the story about this ghostly apparition who roams around the center, saying that everything is fine. And she goes to Singapore, and he decides to. It happens. He's always come. The ghost always comes on a dinner night, on a full moon night. So that full moon night, on a dinner night, he goes in search of the ghost, and he finds him. And I mean, the ghost appears on horseback, and he sees him, and the story goes rushes around the center, and the commandant gets very upset because he's causing problems. But he's telling this girl who's in Singapore now about the story, and she uh, tells him that she has attended a function, and there's a Chinese and Japanese custom that when you have a function, you always leave a couple of chairs for friendly ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So so ultimately, he uses this excuse to become friends with her, and then finally they get married. And when they get married, they have a reception, and you can understand that it was an empty chair left for the friendly ghost who helped to get them together.
Super. So the friendly ghost helped them to get together, and that's how it worked.
Yeah,
And the ghost is a British officer. All
yeah.
right. So is this like a true story, or is this like urban legend?
It depends upon whether you believe in ghosts.
Right. Okay. Perception matters again. Okay. All right. We come back to the perception part of it.
Yeah,
Okay. You've been an integral part of the moJOsh Magnificent Seven family. You've featured in a few of our oratory experiences, including online. And we are glad to have you as a part of the event series that we are launching later this year. You know, the entire concept of the moJOsh Magnificent Seven oratory program is based on the simple premise that, in the journey of life, all of us at many points break down. But when we break, do we give up and break down completely? Or in our brokenness, do we persevere? Do we rise over fear? Do we have that grit and determination to stand strong and move on and get on rather than giving up? And break through rather than breaking down. That's what the premise of the moJOsh Magnificent Seven series is, and or the event series is, and it's going to offer great life leadership and learning to learn lessons, as we call it, including the science of resilience and the law of transformation. Now, in your book, you specifically mentioned that through the 13 stories, the author reveals to the reader how to conquer fear, and he calls it biting the bullet. Can you share some key insights on this and make it simple so that the participants who are listening in on Facebook Live can use these key insights to rise over fear, to get over fear, and emerge resilient, emerge victorious in their journey, no matter how many times they fail, no matter how many times they fall, no matter how many times they break and are broken down. So, what are your key insights on this?
Yeah, basically the stories try to tell the reader that yes, there will be challenges, but you can't run away from that challenge. You have to face it. Because if you run away from a challenge, then you are dead. In the army, if you do not face the challenge immediately, then the enemy will get the better of you and your soldiers will die. So the question is leadership depends upon taking risks, taking decisions, and biting the bullet, which means not running away from the situation but facing it and conquering the situation. You take the example of the story about It's Never Too Late.
Okay.
It is it is about an Air Force pilot who there's a raid on Sargoda, and he's fighting from a subsonic plane, and the enemy's got a starfighter which is a supersonic plane, and he has just enough fuel to hit Sargoda and come back. But the starfighter is chasing him, and he's been ordered, you will not fight back, you have to come back because you've got to fight another day. But he decides to disobey that order because he said, in any case, he'll shoot me down. So might as well fight him. And he fights him and shoots down the starfighter, and he himself is shot down. The Pakistani pilot bails out, ejects and bailed out, and he's saved. But his plane is so damaged that he can't eject, and he dies. Now the thing is that nobody saw this because he was the last one in the flight going back, in the wing going back. So it was only when the Pakistani pilot tells the story of how he was shot down by an Indian pilot that they realized that this was this pilot who 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 refused to give up, who fought till the end at the expense of his life, but he did not give up. He was able to bite the bullet. And although now the question was, this story came to light only after 18 years.
Right.
But the squadron commander, the wing commander Taneja, who was the squadron commander of this pilot, he fought the system for 8 years, and finally, after 23 years, he got a Mahavir Chakra. So it says the story tells you that you must fight, you must not give up, and bite the bullet and face the consequences, irrespective of what happens. Then there's
And
a story about the RMO, a lady doctor, who was prevented by the hierarchy from going into Kashmir because if anything happens to her, what will the public say? But I was the colonel of the regiment, and I made sure she went, and she created history by being the first woman to get a gallantry award in combat. So again, she was determined to go. I helped her to go, and the question therefore arises that she was not prepared to take it lying down. She said, "I will go, and please help me." And I helped her, and it won, and she made history. So there are other stories similar like that. There's the story about regimental bonds where a Gurkha mother loses her husband and her eldest son, and now the question is, there's a link between battalion, regiment, and the army. And although she has lost her husband and she's now going to be alone, she sends her only second son. She says, "You go and replace your brother because the line must not break." So again, overcoming fear, doing what they consider to be right, is what matters. Biting the bullet.
it's
And
nice.
there are many other stories. There's so many other stories which send the same message. And the message to the reader is that all these messages which you have to look for tell you the same thing. that you need to find a solution, not run away from it. Bite the bullet, and you will come victorious.
Right. So there will be challenges in life, there will be adversity, there will be pain, there will be suffering, there will be struggles. But if you run away from it, game over. If you face it, if you figure out and come up with solutions, how to address those challenges and those concerns, game on is what you're saying.
Yeah,
That's what biting the bullet is.
yeah.
Super. I told you that we called our oratory experience the moJOsh Magnificent Seven. And moJOsh is not just a leadership and life learning, life lessons framework that we've created. I would actually call it a philosophy and and the way of life. And vulnerability that you see, which is the missing piece of the jigsaw, which he's holding in his hand right now in the illustration, is the key principle or the key value for people to understand. And many people don't understand vulnerability. How important would you say is the principle of vulnerability in this entire process of facing your fears and rising over them?
See, there is a saying, there's a African saying that don't put your finger in the teeth of your opponent and don't hit him on the head when your finger is within his teeth. What does
Right,
that mean? It
right,
means that when you are vulnerable, you got to find a way to solve the problem. Now, take for instance, unfortunately, I learned this too late.
okay,
I have the habit of confronting my seniors and getting into problems with them. I keep hitting them on the head with my fingers in their teeth.
right,
So 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 you have to pay the consequences.
right,
But so when you are vulnerable, you have to find a way out. Resigning from an appointment is not the answer
right,
because then you are out of the system and you cannot make the system better. If you are there to make the system better, you have to hang on. Now the question is, if you are given a wrong order by your superior, what do you do? Do you tell
absolutely,
him? Do you, for instance, my commander, a new brigade commander, came to my unit, and the Subedar Major said, "The brigade commander is in the lines. Will you please come?" I said, "I'm not coming." So the brigade commander said, "Well, why is the CO not coming?" He said, "Sir, I don't know, but he says he won't come." So he came to my office and he said, "Didn't you know I was in your unit?" I said, "Yes, I did, sir." He said, "Why didn't you come?" So I said, "I didn't come because you didn't inform me you were coming. If you inform me you're coming, I will receive you. I will receive you with honor and take you around myself. But if you come without informing me, it means you don't trust me. And you're welcome to come anytime because my battalion is an open book." So he said, "I've never seen anybody like you." So I said, "There's always the first time, sir." So the issue is that I could have done better because I suffered, my battalion suffered. I could have said, handle this in a better way. So when you are vulnerable, you have to find a solution which is not only equitable with honor, at the same time, you have to ensure that you are able to convince your opponent, it is maybe your senior or whoever it is, that there's a better way to solve the problem.
very nice. I like that. This is the first time I've heard this old African proverb, if I may call it that, that you do not hit a person on the head when your fingers are in his mouth, because then you would end up biting getting your own fingers bitten off, is what you're saying. And I think to articulate your thought about vulnerability, what you're saying is when you understand your vulnerability, it helps you to keep an open mind to look for a win-win solution rather than be confrontational with something. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? All right,
Yeah.
brilliant. And that's a great insight. That's a brilliant insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. Finally, General Ian Cardozo, it's been a pleasure having you with us. We are also going to take this as tutorials for young students in schools from class 5 to class 11 to help them and inspire them to write books. And of course, in order to write books, they need to read books. So, I follow some principles in my journey as a writer, where I love this entire concept. Whether it's self-help books or the true stories of real heroes that I write. moJOsh Inspirator is my self-help book series, and I follow the hero's journey, which is by Joseph Campbell. I'm sure you've read the book. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
hero journey basically is that you're living in an ordinary world. There's a call to adventure. First, there's denial that no, you don't feel that you want to get onto that part of adventure. Then there's the approach. Then there's the ordeal that you go through. There's the reward, the road back, atonement, return, etc. And several books, classics, including Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, can be broken down into this hero's journey. And then, of course, any story needs to have a hero, a victim, and a villain. And the villain need not be a human being only. The villain could be a lion, like you have in Rudyard Kipling's books, or the villain could be environment and climate pollution, which is happening, right? And the victims, of course, are the people who get affected by those things which are going wrong in our world, right? And then you have the four P's of storytelling, which is plot, character, world, language, etc. And then how do you get into the fight? So these are the several structures which I have studied and I use in my journey as a writer. And of course, there is nothing to beat that. You need to read a lot, you need to research a lot before you write a self-help book or write a book of true stories like what you write and I write. And even if you're writing a novel, you need to do a lot of research. What are your thoughts and insights for future aspiring writers? How would you, I mean, how do you go about planning your book and creating that format of how you want to present the story? If you could share that in the next 10 minutes, it would be a great boon for future writers, for young students who aspire to be writers. Over to you.
Yeah, this message is definitely for young students. And when I was in school, I knew that I would one day write. And so from that time onwards, I kept making notes about people, strange incidents, uh, good stories, and I filled up about 20 diaries with all these stories. It's strange that although I wrote all this down, I never looked at them again. But having written it down, because when you, as you rightly said, you got to read and you got to write, because writing makes perfect. So all these thoughts remained in my mind. So when I had to, I, it's not easy to be published. But the point is this: you have to write every day, something or the other, and get into the habit of writing and keep on improving. Now, if I write a poem or write a story, I look at it. And firstly, I do a lot of research, and then I revise it at least 20 times. And each time I revise it, I find that I could make it better. So it could be 3 times, it could be 20 times, it could be 100 times. But the point is this: you have to rewrite till it is perfect. That is one. The second is that what is it that you write about? You write about something which interests you, which motivates you, and therefore I have made up my mind. Now it is now 2024, and I'm 87 years old. How many years do I have left? I don't know, but I'm planning for 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. If I live, fine. If I don't live, fine. But I am writing. I'm planning. I'm writing. It may work out. It may not work out. But I must write. I'm right because I'm compelled to write. So people who want to be aspiring authors must learn that it is not easy. You have to read because reading inspires you, gives you ideas, and it triggers off stories and the way you want to tell them. It's got to be interesting. Supposing I had to write my biography, Kartu Saab is the book I wrote about in my autobiography. I was asked about 20 years ago to write it. I refused to write it, but certain things happened and I decided to write. An ambassador to the UN said, who is a voracious reader. I'm not. I'm sorry to say this myself.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
My Priscilla has just come and said, "You're talking too loud and you're talking too fast."
Okay. Okay.
So what was I saying?
Yeah. You're talking about the writing process. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I broke my thought. Yeah. So the thing is that uh,
You're talking about how you go about writing your stories and how you keep rewriting, and then you're flowing in that thought.
yeah. So therefore, the question, the aspiring writer should not think that if he writes something, it's going to be published.
True,
You have
true.
to, your right, your story has to be such, your article or story or poem has to be such that it is better than normal. You have to be better than the best. You have to aspire to make it so that the person see what the budding author should know. Firstly, the title. The title should be catchy, because if the title is catchy, then the person who's reading it will want to read more. And the first paragraph, in the first paragraph of the article or the poem or whatever, should be such that he gets hooked on. Because the span of attention of a reader is about 10 to 20, 15 seconds. And if he doesn't find it good enough, then he won't read. So that's another thing. And the third thing is that the ending should be such that it is unexpected. And it's all very well, everybody lives happily ever after, but then that story will not be remembered. If the story has an unexpected end and it is not happily ever after, that story will be more remembered. But
Super.
so therefore, these are the things that, and then you need to, uh, you could consult your. Some people say you should consult as you write. My experience is that I write first and then consult, because the idea is there, the article is there, the story is there, and then somebody tells you who you trust and who is competent that no, Ian, I don't think this is right. This should be done. So you do corrective measures after the thing is done. If you do corrective measures even before the article is done, then your article will not be yours; it will be somebody else's.
Great. Thank you, General Cardozo. Great insights. I completely agree with you. And I'm very happy that you shared, because we are actually rolling out a huge student storytelling fellowship. It's called the Rex Karmaveer Global Student Storytelling Fellowship, which is for students from class 5 to class 11. And we have three different ranges in that: kid power, teen power, and youth power. And whoever sends us stories, true stories of real heroes, the best stories would can be featured in the Karmakari book series and become my co-authors. Now, this is what we're rolling out in schools. And the whole idea is to inspire students from a young age to get into the practice of writing and the practice of reading. And I'm very happy that you shared that you, from a young age, have been making notes and about things that you want to write, because you knew that one day you want to write something and you want to share that with the world. And I think I've been doing something similar, not from school days, but from my days as a youth, because I was always inspired by the ordinary person on the street who's going for extraordinary. And I completely agree with you that every morning when you wake up, you need to write something, and you probably would scrap it at the end of the day, and it may take you 7 8 days to get one chapter right. But that is your tenacity, that is your diligence, that is your discipline as a writer, because you want to give the readers something that they would rejoice, something that would give them great insights, and something that would give them something to celebrate about as a reader. So thank you so much for that, General Leon Cardozo. Thank you to everybody on Facebook Live who has joined us today. Please do go and buy General Leon Cardozo's book Beyond Fear. It is available on Amazon and several other bookstores. It's also available on other online websites. But besides Beyond Fear, there's several other books, starting with Paramveer Chakra, which is the first book. And thank you, General Ian Cardozo, for making the time to be with us today. Are there any concluding thoughts and insights that you want to share with the
Yeah,
audience before we say
I would
goodnight?
like I would like to share a few sayings which have inspired me. One is battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground.
Very true. I completely
Then
agree with you.
life is an adventure or it is nothing. You have only one life to live it to the full. Do what is right, irrespective of the consequences. Do what you love Love what you do. Don't be afraid. Never give up. And the last one is a very funny one. It says, if a shark bites you, do not bleed, which
Oh,
means that if you talked about vulnerability, didn't you? So if you're
yes,
vulnerable and somebody hits you and don't go down and then start bleeding because then you'll be attacked by other sharks. So
right.
just relax and keep cool and carry on.
Very true. Very true. It takes a lot of courage to stay cool and calm and composed in situations of adversity. And what neuroscience shows you is that you can only bring out the best in your mind when you're cool, calm, and composed. Otherwise, you're creating mediocrity. So thank you for those parting words, and thank you so much for your time, General Ian Cardozo. Love and regards to Priscilla ma'am and everybody at home. And take care and good night. Good night to
Thank you,
everybody
Jerry.
on Facebook Live. Pleasure,
Thank you, Jerry,
pleasure
for
having
being
this
on,
conversation with you once again.
thank you,
Thank you.
Jerry, for being on your program. It's wonderful being with you again.
Good night, sir. Good night. Thank
Good night.
you.
Good night.